Good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show. Brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now your host, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, good morning, West Michigan. Listen, in the studio with me is Ludwig von Wiedendorsky and Pax. And, of course, Brian Thomas keeping us on path. Online with us is our often co-host, Miles Bauer from the great state of Illinois. Welcome, Miles.
Thank you very much.
Listen, we're in just a minute, we're going to have a guest on as soon as we can get hooked back up with him. But in the meantime, let me take advantage of this pause to say, Ludwig, did you just have a birthday?
I did.
How old are you now?
35.
Are you really?
Yep.
Are you really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yep.
Got a baby face.
I know.
I'm telling you.
I get carded for bubble gum.
I don't blame him. Bubblegum's kind of a dangerous thing. That's part of what we're going to be doing in this first segment is talking about guns and bubbles. You saw the 5-year-old get a day off of school for having the bubble gun at school in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Folks, there's some people that are insane that we've allowed to run our school system. Something is wrong, and we need to see if we can't cut that rotten core out. That's what I'm thinking. Anyhow, so that's what the first segment, I think he's got him almost patched through, is going to be about guns. The second segment, though, I'm hoping that Miles and you and I can kick around first off, the current state of what's going on with the Democratic Party. Oh, my goodness. What was that, Miles, about a burning Philadelphia?
Yeah, my often quoted burning garbage dumpster.
Yeah, listen, I'm telling you now, we heard all year long about how the Republican Party had this big monstrous rift and the convention was going to explode. And, of course, we've got a pretty early guy in the saddle, and they're just pounding each other. When I left off right before we went live, I still couldn't determine who won Kentucky. It was that close. So I find that utterly fascinating. But that's what the second segment is going to be. I got the thumbs up, so I'm told Steve Dulan, are you online with us?
I am, Mike.
Listen, welcome back, or welcome to the show. But, folks, just to get a little background on Steve Dulan, you're an adjunct professor with Cooley Law. That means you're a lawyer, right?
That's true.
Okay, and you're also a member of the board of directors for the Michigan Coalition of Responsible Gun Owners. And just for a little short background, folks, I got an opportunity to meet Stephen when we both shared members on an evening panel. In fact, we talked about it on the show a few weeks ago. It was gun rights versus anti-gun. And so, listen, I was excited about getting you on this morning because I've been debating guns probably most of my life. I can't ever remember a time when my family, my dad, or folks in my immediate circle didn't have firearms. And so the idea that this is some crisis thing, right down, in fact, we were joking before we got you back online, the idea that there was this 5-year-old that got a day off of school for her bubble gun, I think this stuff is just insane. And even the debate that you and I participated in, I wanted to try to steer the debate towards stopping violence, and of course that wasn't allowed. And to me, that's what we should be after. What say you, Stephen?
Well, I agree. Violence is a much bigger issue than guns. A gun is a tool for punching holes in things at a distance, and most guns don't hurt anybody every day. We've got approximately 300 million guns in the United States. It's roughly one gun for every man, woman, or child in the country. If guns were the problem, we'd have the streets running red with blood. So it's not a gun issue. It really is a violence issue. I agree with you completely, Mike.
I'm one of the things I really wanted to get you to touch on, and I got to tell you, watching you in that debate was I wanted to go back out and sit in the audience and just watch because you were spectacular. But one of the things
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted you to touch on something for a minute. When we look at the United States in terms of gun violence or violence in general, if we take out some of the larger inner marketplaces or inner city America, and then look at gun violence or violence in general, the numbers are almost immeasurably small.
Well, that's true. In fact, there has been an upswing in the murder rate in about a dozen cities over the last year. And if you took out those dozen, gun violence, so-called, would drop to almost statistical insignificance. For a long time, it was three major cities, Chicago, D.C., and Houston. For some reason, Houston was an epicenter for years for violence. It was even worse than Los Angeles in terms of murders and other violent crimes per 100,000 citizens. But it's about a dozen cities this year that have had an upswing, specifically in the murder rate. And if you take those all out, you're absolutely right. The number of people actually killed with firearms drops to such a low rate, it's almost immeasurable. And it turns out that the vast majority of so-called gun crime is actually drug gang crime.
I can tell you that the caricature that's created by popular media about gun ownership or gun nuts, those types of terms that we hear so often, and frankly the hysteria that would go to the point where they find it necessary to give a student a suspension over a bubble. It's, by the way, it was a transparent bubble gun machine, not even a gun. It gets to the point where it's just stupid, and that from a society that just in my lifetime, Steve, we'd come from schools used to do training to the point where she gets suspended for, and during that period of time, the actual violence that they seek, to me, it's almost nonsensical. It's almost like they're advocating for the wrong answers.
Well, I agree. It is nonsensical, and in fact, there's another group I belong to that is called the Foundation for the Separation of School and State, and so that's kind of a parallel, separate issue. The idea that, honestly, in many of the government schools at this point in history, madness reigns. The lunatics are in charge of the asylum, and that's certainly a bigger part of the issue, I think, even on that bubble gun. I saw the picture of that thing online, by the way, and you're right. It's transparent. It doesn't look anything like a real gun.
Right.
And this reminded me of the time when the kid chewed his Pop-Tart into a gun shape, and everybody lost their minds at that school. What that boils down to is a zero-tolerance issue. Zero tolerance is madness, in my opinion.
It is, and in fact, the zero tolerance means zero common sense. 3 years ago, a different child in a different state, that the one most recent was in Colorado, and the other one I think was Alabama, but certainly down south, had a similar gun at the bus stop, and got themselves in some trouble and made some national news. That was just a few months after the show had started, and we touched on it back then. But some of this stuff is not reasonable, which causes me to pause and say, if it's not reasonable, and a lot of these folks are not stupid, so they must have a reason that I can't see. Those folks that we debated didn't want to talk about violence in general. They didn't want to talk about one of my childhood friend's daughters who was stabbed to death. Those things were off. They weren't, and I thought, wait, how disrespectful and how obnoxious to truth can the argument be if it doesn't want to look at the facts in total?
Well, the last violence thing we just had in the news was a mass stabbing at the mall, and a concealed carrying off-duty officer stopped it. That was a blip. Once they found out it was a stabbing, and then a off-duty officer with a concealed carry ended the massacre, you didn't hear anything more about it.
No, but if it had been a gun,
we'd be still hearing about it.
It went on for days and days and days until somebody else, somewhere else, did something stupid. Now, Miles, there's no gun violence in Chicago, right?
No, not at all.
I assume that, given how stringent the laws in Chicago are.
Yeah, and it really kind of speaks to some of the hypocrisy down here that they can allow what is taking place down here in the city, and yet it pretty much goes unreported nationally.
It is a fascinating thing because, in fact, that even came up in the debate, as I recall, Stephen. If you look at we're talking about 4 or 5 people somehow that got shot in some public arena. So cable news will fill the TVs for night after night. But what, Miles, you're losing 40 and 50 people every weekend in Chicago?
Yeah.
And it's insane to me that while Putin over in Russia has switched the whole rationale on gun violence, or violence actually, around by starting to allow some of his law-abiding citizens to be able to protect themselves. What a concept.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, one of my law students found a quote from Seneca the Ancient Roman from something like 2,500 years ago. And when translated to English, it says, "A sword is never a killer, it's a tool in the killer's hand," which sounds a lot like guns don't kill people, people kill people, that we talk about now. So, we dug a little deeper, and essentially they were having the same debate about concealed swords and daggers in ancient Rome that we're having here and now. So there's a divergence in thought within humans about weapons that persists, and we just happen to be talking about guns now. I always tell my students somebody will probably be debating laser and phaser control long after I'm dead and gone.
Set it to stun, I'm telling you. When I look at history, and it goes to your point, most of the Founding Fathers' quotes on firearms, the reason they're still so valid and so often quoted is because, frankly, they were having the same debate. And there will probably always be that debate. But to me, it goes down to control and not firearms. If the goal was to squelch violence, that's the conversation they would allow us to have. And since that's not the conversation we're allowed to have, the only other reasonable conversation is if somebody wants control. The person in control of the firearms probably has more control. So if folks like Hillary, that is surrounded by firearms, doesn't want me to have a firearm, sounds like she wants control. And to me, it's that simple.
Well, that's exactly right. In fact, the United States is a country founded on armed revolution, and that first shot, that first battle of Lexington and Concord was over gun control.
Right. And I'm still not going to set my down. Listen, one of the things I started to say, and I actually cut myself off earlier, was that Renegade River, the customers that I've got coming, and listen, I've been involved in politics for a fair number of years, well over a decade, and I've been in the retail industry in general for all of my adult life. The folks within the gun nut circle, whatever you want to call us, I'm okay with that. The folks that come and do business at Renegade River and probably most other gun shops, they're the best slice of the American pie I've come in contact with. It doesn't know race. It doesn't know ethnicity. The folks that come in, they're people, both men and women. And by the way, folks, probably a third of my customer base are Democrats. I don't get how they vote against themselves, but that's for another show. My point is that these folks that come in, regardless of what their background is, that they're taking part in this freedom, and by far and large, overwhelmingly, they're the honest folks that I can do handshake deals with. Where do you see that in the general society? And I hate to put it that way, but they're the best slice of the American pie that I've come in contact with.
Well, I grew up in a gun shop, and I agree with you, Mike.
Of course, you were in the UP. Does that count, Stephen?
It is a special place for special people.
Well, someone from up there was recently telling me the difference between the UP and down here is work ethic, and they're working on the ethic that was true in 1955, and we not so much. So I don't know about that, but that's what I was told.
It is a different culture. It's a very, very unique culture, but I've noticed it's consistent. I've lived in other places, and I've noticed it's consistent. You find the local non-chain gun shop, and you can make some good friends.
Yeah, and their prices tend to be lower, which is ironic because most folks think box stores are going to be cheaper, and not so much because they got a lot of people, and a lot of heat, and a lot of air conditioning. Just the math just doesn't work that way. That said, we've only got a couple minutes left. I need you to help me boil this down, Stephen. What could we do if our goal was really to reduce violence in the United States?
Well, this is one where some of the folks on my side of the gun debate try to distance themselves from my conclusions because, as near as I can tell, the best way to reduce violence in the United States is to legalize drugs. And that's because the vast majority of violent crime surrounds the illegal drug trade. If you are a drug dealer, you've got a very valuable product in a highly competitive market, and the one entity you cannot call is your local police agency when somebody tries to rob you or take your territory by killing you. So that's where the vast majority of this violence comes from. And if that's your goal, that would be effective, I believe.
There are police reports that have been written that I've read where people have exactly made that phone call. That he stole my drugs and I want them back. So,
and it becomes a joke. We laugh at how stupid the drug dealer was to call the police. Yeah, and so if you actually look at the numbers, though, and I'm not sure we're going to have. Not only do people think I'm crazy sometimes as soon as I say legalize drugs, but then the devil's in the details about how do you regulate and tax it. It looks like Colorado's doing pretty well, at least fiscally, with their plan, and so is Washington State. And this is the part where people consider me a radical. I'm not just talking about marijuana. I'm talking about legalizing all drugs because the war on drugs has failed. That's where the violence comes from, and it bleeds over into creating hopelophobia, where you get these irrational people out there trying to blame the guns instead of the drug gangs.
I got to tell you, I'm out of time, but I really want you to come back on that topic. And candidly, one of my reasons I want to have you come back is I'm really torn on it. If you would have asked me this question a year ago, I would have been probably on your team. And what's transpired between then is my business location has allowed me to see things that I didn't used to see. And so I really want you to come back somewhere in the next few weeks, Stephen.
Sure.
And let's really have that debate. Maybe I'm going to learn something because I'm really torn on that. So listen, Stephen Dulan, we're out of time. Is there a way that folks can get a hold of you or one of your organizations that are interested?
Yeah, absolutely. MCRGO.org. And we encourage people to join because part of what we do and part of what I do is advocate for positive changes to Michigan gun law. And frankly, the more members we have, the more attention we get in Lansing at the Capitol.
Very, very nice. And in fact, we got off on so many other things. I got to get you back on for a double segment. We got to do the drug thing, and we got to finish up with what's going on in Lansing because there's a lot of changes in the midst over there. So,
I look forward to it.
All right, Stephen Dulan, thank you very, very much. And folks, we'll be right back talking vice presidential politics.
You're listening to the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms. All priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com. Family owned right here in Michigan because you deserve it.
And this is the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And man, this is going fast today. We're already in segment 2.
It did go fast. And listen, I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't have more time with Stephen Dulan. What an intelligent guy. And at the very end of it, he threw me a curve with topics I would have loved to have debated him on, even though he's probably one of the best debaters I've ever been involved in a debate with. That said, folks, if you're just tuning in, I got Ludwig von Wiedendorsky, who's trying to get us streaming on Facebook. I don't know how the heck he's going to do that. He says we're live. We'll
Get on
see.
the Facebook page.
Oh, man. And our often co-host, Miles Bauer from the great state of Illinois, is online with us. Listen, what I want to do is spend some time in this segment, guys, and discuss what's going on. Well, a handful of things. Did Hillary win Kentucky?
I don't know yet.
I'm still confused.
I don't even know what it
Last
was this
I
morning.
checked, it was a 23-vote lead she had.
23 votes. Wow.
Yep.
And when they say your vote don't count, we're talking 23 votes in a statewide. That's a pretty big, significant nomination process for an entire state to say 23 votes apart.
There's a cemetery in Kentucky that didn't vote.
Well, they voted twice. You mean they didn't get to vote 3 times?
Yeah.
So that would have been. But she's claiming victory.
Yeah, she tweeted, "I won, thanks."
I don't know what she won yet.
But they equally, it doesn't matter actually in the sense of who won based on delegate count. I guess it's 50-50.
Yeah, I saw that part. So
Right.
it's, what do they get? Is it 23 or 23? Doesn't matter because I heard for 6 months about how the Republican Party was messing with delegates. By the way, we weren't. That debate aside, they've got super delegates.
Yeah, because I think he's winning right now by delegates. One in states are really close.
No, she's got him just by a little dinky bit. But then when you add on the hundreds of superdelegates, listen, if I were a Democratic voter, I would be enraged, which really goes to Miles's point that Philadelphia is going to be fun to watch. What do you think, Miles? Is it going to look like 1968 again in Philadelphia?
I don't know if it's going to be that extreme. I mean, I think some of this is going to come down to what is Bernie's price to go away? Because I don't think Hillary wants him as a vice president. I mean, and I don't know anything about the Democrats, so the Democrats may well disagree, but it certainly seems like she doesn't want him as vice president. So what is going to be his price? Or does he want to turn it into a spectacle? It'll be interesting to watch.
It is. I think it's going to be fun to watch. If you look at some of the recent primary states where they've gotten at some of their state conventions of late, they've got some real hostility. When you look at entire state nominations that come down to 23 votes in the day after, we still don't know yet. That's pretty significant difference. When I say significant, the polarization is extreme.
As of this morning, 9 petitions or filings for permits to protest the convention in Philadelphia.
Well, see, and that really goes to the point, because there's going to be legal action before it's done. But just like we talked about leading up to where we're at on the Republican side, the early on, in fact, when Miles first started joining us, the big debate at the time was what's going on with the rules, who's going to be on the rules committee at convention. Listen, the Democratic Party has all of those variables also. So you've got some significant angst growing with focus on that superdelegate process, which is just wrong, no matter who you are. I like it because it's the Democrats, and they're going to beat each other over. I mean, shame on me, but I do. But if I were a Democrat, my hair would be on fire over that. Even if you were an honest Hillary supporter, honest, if you just, even if your name was Sherry and you were an honest Democrat supporter, a Hillary supporter rather, would you feel good about winning when you know you didn't really win? Would you think that you had a really strong candidate when it had to be the superdelegates that kept your candidate in the winning position?
What's that old adage? You're not trying if you're not cheating.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I don't. Only thing I know is that when I put my honesty hat on, if I were on that side of the fence, I would be as enraged as some of the Trump supporters were early on when they thought they were being cheated. Honest. The only difference is that these folks are obviously being cheated. There's no question about it. It's not like is there gamesmanship going on? There's none of those questions. It's part of the system.
Yeah, it's known.
Truly, their hair should be on fire. Bernie's hair should be, both of them should be on fire.
Feel the burn.
He should be feeling the burn. Honest, he should. Anyhow, who's going to be the vice presidential nominee for Hillary? What do you speculate, Miles?
Well, I'm thinking that this might be a way for Hillary to tamp this thing down, is to let Bernie pick the vice president. Therefore, it gives the Bernie supporters a feel for that they are being represented in a Clinton White House.
So you think they're going to go have a cocktail and she says, all right, Bernie, you pick anybody but you.
Yeah, I mean, because if Hillary doesn't see the burning garbage dumpster coming.
Oh, she's got to.
Yeah.
When you're winning states by 23 votes and they're not calling it yet, you gotta know there's a train wreck at the end of the tracks.
Yeah. And so, that may well be a way that she kind of gets this to all kind of at least get to a more human tone, is to let him pick the other side of the ticket, and then, she'll just have to swallow and keep walking.
Miles, have you ever seen the show House of Cards on Netflix?
Yes.
Have you watched all the seasons all the way through?
Yes, I have.
I love it. Mike won't watch it, by the way, and I tell him he's insane for not watching it because this is real.
Is that something I'm going to like, Miles?
Yes.
All right.
Oh! You listen to Miles. Okay. Must be an age thing. You get the age thing, but no, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, Mike, this is like a dramatic version of what Bill Clinton actually did.
Okay. All right.
Well, that's why I bring it up. Is this morning the rumor is because as of 2 or 3 days ago, they said Bill's going to be in charge of the economy if she wins.
Yeah.
This morning, the rumor is that he may be the VP.
Fascinating.
What do you think, Miles? You think that's a little house of cards play there?
Well, one, I would be absolutely stunned if she picked Bill to be the vice president.
I don't think he can be.
I didn't think he could be either, but
Yeah.
I think that would absolutely guarantee Philadelphia would burn.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't have a third term, and the person the person that serves as vice president has to be eligible to serve as president.
and that's what I thought. That's the reason I brought it up.
I think that's media just blowing smoke, trying to create more. What about Elizabeth Warren? Pocahontas.
No, she might, but I just think that there are a lot of problems with her.
You're a mastered understatement this morning.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's flip over to the other side.
Although I would say, before we leave, for Hillary to have to come out and make statements that Bill's going to be in charge of the economy, doesn't that inherently show how weak she is?
It does. It really, really does. It's saying, forget Obama. Would you like another Bill Clinton term?
Right.
And Monica's going, well, okay, what the heck?
Right.
Are they hiring?
Yeah. Can I be an intern again? I'm sure that's what she's saying. Anyway, that's clearly the point, that she knows she's so weak. She wanted to run as if Bill never existed, and that lasted for about a half an hour. And then reality set in, and she has to have him, or she has no way of really legitimately beating Bernie. I think most honest folks, forget where you're at ideologically, most honest folks know that Bernie's economy cannot stand. And so that's what would prevent him from going to the next level. But the Democratic Party, they need to come true with their people, in my view. Of course, they're obviously not taking direction from me, and I don't blame them on that. But now, what about, you're a Newt guy, aren't you, Miles?
Yeah, I would say, as this thing winds on, I like Newt. I like Cruz. I don't think Cruz will do it because I think Cruz is starting to look at 2020.
Well, the thing there, we've got to ask I think we've got to ask some questions. And the first is what would Trump's long-term plans be, assuming he won? Does he see himself with a second term? If he doesn't, he'd be almost 75 trying to do a national election. He already knows at 69 that that's a big deal. And so you step back a little bit. And so one of the things he would have to legitimately be doing is looking at his vice president from the tense of what if I can't or don't want to, what would be the best thing, first for the our union of states, and then secondly, and only then secondly, what's best for the party. Now, whether that's Cruz or not, I don't know. I would have probably said Ben Carson although I've kind of lost my luster for him over the last couple months. That aside, maybe a Cruz. I mean, frankly, on the whole path of age, Newt might be pushing too much age.
He's in his mid to late 60s too, isn't he?
Well, I don't know. Do you know how old he is?
No.
Yeah, I don't. Well, you can't look it up.
I think Newt's about 72.
Is he that old?
I think he's older.
Yeah, you may be right. But then, to me, it's kind of fascinating because if you look at the Ben Carson list of 5, and I don't know how legitimate that list was, whether they were just trying to create a news day for themselves or what. But Ben Carson was not on his own list, and neither was Newt. So that might not be the direction Trump is thinking at all.
72.
Yeah, he's 72, and next month he'll be 73.
Yeah, that's really just too old. So, but when you watch him on Fox News and all of the other interviews he's doing, he surely does sound like a candidate for vice president. And I like him a lot, but I don't think I'd want to see a 72-year-old fella in there.
Miles, I got a question for you because I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he's going to vote for Trump, whatever, and he said the only thing that would actually maybe keep him home is if he picks Sarah Palin. What do you think about that?
I don't think Palin. I think that the press has pretty much destroyed her.
Right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, I actually liked her, but I think that the press, that the common person walking down the street really doesn't take her seriously any longer because of the job the press has done to her.
Yeah, and I can say personally, if it was Palin, I'd really have to take a big gulp before putting that vote in. I'm not a fan of hers.
Sarah?
Yeah, I liked her when she first came around in 2008. And I just feel she's almost played into the press's view of her being a loon or a nut job.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I get how they've done it.
Well, I think she's played into it a little bit of, okay, you're going to call me that, I'm going to show you. Well, don't show them. Be what you are.
I don't know. Listen, she gave a two-day interview, and over the course of that 2-day interview, can you imagine giving... You've did interviews as a candidate. Yeah. So she does a 48-hour interview with someone that you know going in as an adversary. And so you know going in, I don't care who you are, you can be Henry Kissinger. Somewhere in 48 hours, you're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And that single mistake, those folks played, they're still playing it. You go, oh, stop.
I'm not talking about then, though. I'm talking about now, like when she was at the Trump rallies, she's almost obnoxious.
I think she was really resentful, and probably wrongfully so, but she was buying into a lot of the hype that was being created about stolen delegates, etc. Yeah. And listen, everyone's got a different view on that. My view is you can't steal people. Yeah. Okay? Now, but that said, I get the other side. I understand. I respect it. So when I listen to her talk, when I put the hat on and I try to put myself in their shoes, which I was not at the time, Miles will tell you that. But when I sit and listen, I get the fervor. I get the anger. When you think the guy is winning and they're stealing it, Bernie's got to feel the same way. That's what we were just talking about. So was she on message and on cue? Did she make mistakes? I don't know. Listen, passion and politics go together. They just do. I can show you some quotes from the founders. You go, did he really say that? Yeah, he did.
I still think Condoleezza Rice is the pick, especially on what you said, Mike. What do you think, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, I've liked her all along, but she's not showing up anywhere in the media that I can find. So it sounds like that has just become more of a symbolic name than anything that's actually legitimate so far. Unless you guys have seen something in the media where
not one peep. The only conversation about her I've seen with any kind of consistency, frankly, is from us three. Once in a while, you'll get a blogger somewhere that agrees with us and say, why isn't her name being and wasn't on the list? And I have to tell you on that point, one of the things I was a little bit disappointed with Carson's list, and frankly, I still don't know if it was really the list. But if it was the list, I thought it was a little two-dimensional. Other than Sarah Palin, the other four were from the race, the actual the primary. And okay, maybe all four of those people need to have a role in the administration. I don't know that they do or not, and I happen to agree with Miles. I don't think that Cruz has got his eye on that at all. He's looking down the road saying, I just lost against a guy that's going to be too old in 5 years.
Well, what do you think about the Republican Party? Like in 1980, they went to Reagan and said, we don't care who you pick, you're taking Bush. This is your guy. Yeah, you want a shot. Do you think they could try that with Trump?
I think they can, but I
guess.
I don't know that, but there was a lot closer difference between the delegate counts than there is in this race, because by the time Trump is done, he's going to be well over double his nearest competitor. Mm-hmm. Well, we wouldn't have thought that 6 weeks ago, but the math is the math. That about right there, Miles?
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing I would point out to you about 1980 that is often forgotten. Remember, the Republicans asked that congressman from Rockford, Illinois, John B. Anderson, to run as a third-party candidate.
Right. Now, but you've got that same thing right now. You've got the threat of exactly that same thing with the Romney Club and others that are not excited about having they're not exactly Trump-publicans yet. They've not crossed over. And whether they're really doing it or they may be using that as a primer for negotiations on exactly the topic we're talking about when they get to convention. So, yeah.
How important do you think the VP selection is in this race? Do you think it's more important than normal races, less important?
I think it's more important. What do you think, Miles?
I don't know. I would lean more towards it's just settling everybody down. I think Trump has got to settle the conservatives down, and Hillary's got to settle Bernie down. So I'm viewing it more as an element to actually debate and to compromise, rather than really worried about Trump, getting out of office or Hillary getting out of office. Although I guess, now that I sit here and think about it, Hillary could actually be in trouble based on how that FBI investigation comes back. So it might be a bigger deal on the Democrat side, given Hillary's legal issues, than it is necessarily. I think it'll be another way for Trump to reach out to the far right and say, please come home.
Yeah, I agree with you on both. Listen, I'm getting the up against the hard brake signals here, where he's ripping the towel in half, and stop signs, and listen, I'm dealing with all of the signs that pop up on the Roadrunner. Folks, we're going to be right back with the Enigma Report.
This is the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and West Michigan's Talk 1230 WTKG.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com, because you deserve it.
3, 2, 1, 0.
And the Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by renegaderiver.com. It is time for it once again. We've been looking forward to this all morning. Yes, Mike has.
I have.
How about you, Matt?
I didn't sleep last night. I've been looking forward to it since yesterday afternoon.
What are we talking about? We're talking about the Enigma Report. So here we go.
Let's jump right in. Listen, I want you folks to picture and this is for all listeners, for Miles, for you, for me, and certainly for Brian Thomas. You're walking out into a huge cafeteria, and in the cafeteria, everyone is separated into small groups of association. So, for instance, there may be a table filled with mathematics and computer experts. I don't know if Miles would segregate himself to that table. If there were a table for talk show hosts, you might, Brian Thomas and we might put ourselves in that group. I think most folks, when they look out, let's say you were standing up on some steps, and so you're looking out across this vast room, and you can see each table has a large sign on it. It maybe there's a welder's table, an electrician's table, a plumber's table. Maybe there's a father's table and a mother's table, and different things that people primarily associate with. And so folks, I think, would naturally, without a court order, without a Supreme Court interaction, would naturally, by the way, of any race, of any social background, of any sexual choice, folks would naturally associate with whatever it is that they most primarily associate with. For instance, I used to say, and that was after 30-some years in the car business, I'm not a welder, I'm not a plumber, I'm a father. That's what I most associate with, still do. So if there were a table for fathers and a table with radio talk show hosts, man, I'd be torn, but I'd probably end up at the father's table. That's probably where I would be. Miles, would you pick a table, or would you stand in the middle all alone?
So I would probably line up in at the father table as well.
I think that's how I would see it. Listen, folks, and why this is an enigma to me is I'm a friend of mine sent me an article from Daily Mail. Mississippi town is ordered to desegregate its schools more than a half century after the Supreme Court ruled that practice was unconstitutional. And forget whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional. Forget all of those things for a minute. Let's throw the legalese into the trash can for a moment. It defies human nature, is what it does, in my view. And that's what makes an enigma to me. It isn't race. It isn't any of those. There's all kind of talk show hosts from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different political leanings. I listen to progressive talk radio a lot. That's why both my hairs are on fire. I think that people do what they associate with. I'm with Miles. I would be probably at the father's table, and I'd be torn over it, by the way, because I love doing what we're doing right now. But I love being a father more.
There was a hockey table and a father's table. I'd
Yeah.
be torn.
We
I'd want to
wouldn't-
go to the dad's table, but then I'd do is try to grab some dads
Listen.
to go to the hockey table.
And we wouldn't let you sit at the talk show host table, just so you know.
Oh. Seat taken?
Yeah, everyone squishes together so there's no room. Sorry, you're out. See, nothing's changed since junior high for you.
So what you're saying is, if you're the guy in the middle and you're forcing me to go to the welder's table, and I know nothing about welding, I don't even know if I'd associate well with those people.
Listen, that's
but you're
exactly-
forcing me to go to the welding table, and I have to.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. When you reach in as a social experiment, and by the way, one of the things the reason my friend forwarded this link to me is because he knows that one of the focuses of this show has been that my personal belief is we cannot save America until we save the American family. Okay, and we can't do that till we get a hold of inner city America. I believe those things with all my heart. I passionately believe them. And so when I look at the governments, local, state, and federal, they're still experimenting with things that, frankly, when we look at why school choice is being fought with now, it goes to your point when we talked about doing this show, Matt. Those things followed the failed experiment that was busing. And so, I mean, they know that doing this doesn't work. They know that the result will be inner city schools with educational results on par with Haiti. They know these things. Why don't they keep their hands off of humans and let humans decide for themselves? Miles, am I off in left field on this one?
No, I think you're dead on.
I don't get it. I just think that people want to be where people want to be. And what kind of government do we have that says they have to be somewhere else? And the irony to it is we look at the school voucher program, which if I were a young parent in a troubled community for schooling at least, and I look at my sons and my daughters, I would want to say, stop making me pay school tax for schools that are failing and let me do the American way. Let's do some competition here. Give me my money back in the form of a voucher and let me go spend it where I need to spend it at. I just think that's the American way. Now, I mean, that's obviously I'm alone on that, but I think it goes back to the fact that if I went out into the big cafeteria, I'd be sitting at the father's table, or I'd be sitting at the talk show host table.
Well, you're not alone with the voucher thing. I pay for my kids to go to school. They go to St. Mary's in Spring Lake.
Now you've taken a parochial approach.
Yeah, because I felt I had to, based on the government's intervention of Common Core education as one part, and the other part, obviously, the religious aspect. Don't forget that. It's a Catholic school. By the way, they're looking for third graders for next year.
Do they have Common Core?
No.
Just wanted to get that point in.
Yeah, and it's very hard for them to find any books or worksheets that aren't Common Core based.
Right.
So they use the Common Core sheets.
That was $1 billion industry that had nothing to do with education.
Yeah, no. And they use the sheets and they'll modify it and say, don't do this, do it this way. So that, because I've told the teachers, if I see something with Common Core, I will write on there myself, he or she is not doing it, and sign my name. So if you hold them accountable, call me. Because they're here for that reason, as part of the reason.
But you've decided to have your children associate with people that are from your background.
Yeah.
That's really what you've done.
Yeah.
You've went to the educational cafeteria and said, we're going to go to that table.
Yep. I wouldn't even have thought to look at like
done.
I don't even know if there is any schools that are based on a Jewish religion or Protestant. I don't know.
Yes. The answer is yes.
And if there is, I wouldn't
and
go
yes.
there. I think I'd feel awkward. I'm Catholic.
We forgive you for that. We won't have any Catholic Protestant wars in here today. Frankly, there's not enough time, or we would. So, now, Miles, you're a father. Did your son go to private school, parochial, public school? What did many of you do?
No, so as a result of my divorce, he lives with his mother.
Okay, goes to public school.
Yes.
Okay, is he doing well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I asked that final question because folks understand, I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's a successful public school system, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with busing and forced and desegregation when folks don't. First off, most of the circumstances anymore don't call for that. But in either case, this should be up to individuals and parents that are in control of their children. That's my view of it.
I think it's an awkward
Mike.
situation
Yes,
for the
Miles.
kid.
I would remind you of one thing, going back to Reagan's first inaugural. Remember when he said, from time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule,
right.
that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else?
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. That's just as potent and powerful and as true as you can be. Folks, We're all out of time. I hear the music going. I want you to do me a favor. Start following us on Facebook, because next week we'll have audio for everybody. Talk about freedom in America. Audio for everybody. / The Mike Hewitt Show on Facebook. Also follow us at Talk Mike Hewitt on Twitter. Go to our .com. Let us know what you're thinking. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. Join in. Very, very much. I appreciate you joining me today, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Miles, you're going to be with us next Wednesday?
I'll certainly try.
Very nice, folks. We will all see you then.